standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my penthouse. I adjusted the plain black dress that hung loosely on my frame. It was deliberate. Every detail of this outfit had been chosen to maintain the illusion. The MacBook on my desk, its screen displaying a few rudimentary digital sketches, completed the picture-perfect facade of Maya, the struggling artist. My family would never suspect that beneath this unassuming exterior lay the mind of someone who'd quietly built an empire worth hundreds of millions. But today wasn't just another family reunion. It felt like a ticking time bomb. As I tucked the gold-embossed invitation into my bag, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from Marcus, my CFO. Contracts are ready. Morrison Tech's board approved the sale. They still have no idea Dreamscape is behind it. A satisfied smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. 10 years of hiding my success were about to pay off in ways they could never imagine. The drive to Diana's Hamptons mansion gave me too much time to think, too much time to remember how far I'd come and why I'd started down this path in the first place. Growing up as the youngest Morrison meant one thing: business was everything. My father, James Morrison, had turned Morrison Tech into a household name in enterprise software. Diana, the golden child, followed his footsteps perfectly, earning her MBA from Harvard and climbing the corporate ladder like she was born for it. And then there was me, the disappointment. "You're throwing your life away," Diana had said when I announced I was majoring in animation instead of accepting my spot at Wharton. That day, our mother cried as if I'd been diagnosed with some terminal illness. What they didn't know, and what I never told them, was that while they thought I was wasting time drawing cartoons, I was secretly taking night classes in business administration. By the time they realized I wasn't going to change my mind, I'd already created something bigger than any of us could have imagined. But now, as I navigated the winding roads leading to Diana's estate, I received news that made my blood run cold. A text from my assistant revealed that Diana was planning to sell Morrison Tech to a foreign conglomerate infamous for gutting companies after acquisition. Entire departments would be wiped out, employees left jobless. This wasn't just bad business, it was betrayal. Morrison Tech wasn't just a company. It was supposed to be our legacy. Yet here was Diana, ready to hand it over to strangers without a second thought. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I couldn't let this happen, not under my watch. For years, I'd hidden who I really was, letting them believe I was nothing more than a failure chasing childish dreams. But now, the stakes were higher than ever. If I didn't act fast, everything my father had worked for would vanish overnight. I parked my modest Honda Civic at the edge of Diana's driveway, staring up at the mansion looming ahead. Its manicured lawns and flawless landscaping screamed success. Her version of success. To them, I was still the black sheep, the daughter who couldn't measure up. Little did they know, within hours, their entire world would turn upside down. And I was finally ready to show them exactly who Maya Morrison truly was. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my deliberately modest Honda Civic as I parked it at the far edge of Diana's circular driveway. The mansion loomed ahead, its manicured lawns and flawless landscaping screaming success, her version of success. To them, I was still just Maya, the black sheep who couldn't measure up. But today wasn't about their perception. It was about survival, for Morrison Tech and for me. I adjusted my plain black dress one last time in the rearview mirror before stepping out, ensuring every detail reinforced the illusion they'd clung to for years. Maya, the struggling artist. As I walked toward the house, my phone buzzed again. It was Marcus, my CFO. "Maya, the board meeting has been moved up to tomorrow morning. Pressure from the foreign partner. They're pushing hard. We need you there." My stomach tightened. Time was running out faster than I'd anticipated. Before I could step inside, my mother appeared on the porch, her voice carrying across the driveway like a spotlight trained directly on my inadequacies. "We were starting to wonder if you'd make it," she said, air-kissing me while subtly scanning my outfit. Her eyes lingered on my lackluster Target dress, calculating its cost, or lack thereof, and finding it appropriately underwhelming. "Traffic," I explained curtly, following her into the house. As we entered, snippets of conversation drifted through the opulent rooms: stock prices, acquisition strategies, market trends, all the usual topics that dominated these gatherings. Near the fireplace, my cousin James held court, boasting about his hedge fund's latest deal. Aunt Patricia showed off photos of her son's new startup. And then, Predictably, Diana took center stage. "There's something we've been meaning to discuss," Diana announced, her voice cutting through the chatter like a scalpel. She turned to face me, her smile razor-sharp. "Maya, dear, we've all been talking about how best to help you. After all, we can't let you waste your talent forever." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Perhaps an entry-level position at Morrison Tech? Something simple, basic graphic design work, maybe even illustrations for employee handbooks. Her tone dripped with condescension, but what came next hit harder. "We really need to help Maya before she completely loses her last chance," Diana declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room erupted in laughter, not kind or supportive, but mocking. Each chuckle felt like a knife twisting in my chest. For a moment, anger surged within me, hot and uncontrollable, but I forced myself to breathe deeply, masking my emotions behind a practiced smile. This wasn't the time to lose control, but the situation worsened. Another message lit up my phone. "Foreign partner is accelerating negotiations. If no action by end of day tomorrow, deal moves forward without us." My hands trembled slightly as I tucked the phone back into my purse. Every second mattered now. Tomorrow's board meeting wasn't just a formality, it was a battleground. If I didn't act fast, Morrison Tech would slip away into the hands of strangers who cared only about profit margins, not legacy. Standing near the window, I watched Diana bask in the glow of admiration from our relatives. They hung on to her every word, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. What they didn't know, and what I wouldn't let them discover until it was too late, was that the struggling artist they pitted had already orchestrated the biggest coup of their lives. All I needed was one more day. The boardroom fell silent as I stepped into the room, my presence commanding attention. Gone was the modest artist they'd mocked for years. In her place stood Maya Phoenix, CEO of Dreamscape Animation Studios, the company that had just acquired Morrison Tech. Diana's expression shifted from disbelief to outright panic. "Security," she called sharply, her voice cracking like a whip. But Marcus, ever calm and composed, stepped forward before anyone could move. "Security won't be necessary," he said smoothly, his tone brooking no argument. "Miss Phoenix is not only the founder of Dreamscape, but also its majority shareholder. She has every right to be here." Diana's face flushed red, her composure crumbling under the weight of this revelation. Her eyes darted between Marcus, me, and the documents I began distributing across the table. This is impossible," James Morrison thundered, rising abruptly from his seat at the head of the table. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the polished mahogany surface. "You're accusing us of unethical practices?" he continued, pointing an accusatory finger at me. "Maya used her family connections to infiltrate our company. This acquisition violates every principle of fair business." I felt the sting of his words, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I met his gaze with icy resolve. Opening my briefcase, I pulled out a stack of meticulously organized files, proof of Dreamscape's independence and growth over the past decade. Each document told a story: the $5,000 prize money from my first animated short film, the contracts with small businesses that had grown into multimillion-dollar partnerships, the patents filed under Dreamscape's name long before Morrison Tech even considered entering the digital content market. "That's where you're wrong, Dad," I said coolly, placing the documents in front of him. My voice carried an edge of steel. Dreamscape wasn't built using Morrison Tech resources or connections. It was built despite them. For 10 years, I've kept this part of my life separate from yours because I knew exactly how you'd react. You would have tried to control it, to turn it into another division of your empire. James scanned the papers, his face pale with shock. The reality hit him like a freight train. Everything he thought he knew about me had been a lie. A carefully constructed facade designed to protect what I'd built. Diana, meanwhile, was frantically flipping through the documents, her hands trembling. But all those times you came to family dinners in that old Honda," she stammered, unable to reconcile the image of the struggling artist with the powerful so standing before her. "You assumed," I interrupted, my tone sharp enough to cut glass. "And assumptions are dangerous things, Diana. That tiny apartment you pitted? I own the entire building. The Honda? Just one car in a collection that includes 2 Teslas and a Porsche. But none of that mattered to you because you never looked beyond the illusion. The room was deathly quiet now, the air thick with tension. Even the other board members sat frozen, their usual deference to James replaced by stunned silence. As I straightened my suit jacket, I locked eyes with each member of my family. They weren't looking at a failure anymore. They were staring at someone who had outplayed them at their own game. The boardroom at Morrison Tech's headquarters was a powder keg of tension. After my announcement, a faction of senior executives, loyalists to Diana, had begun pushing back with everything they had. They gathered in clusters, whispering urgently, their body language radiating defiance. One by one, they approached me, their voices laced with thinly veiled threats. "If you retain control, we'll leave," said Richard Hendricks, the CFO, his tone sharp as broken glass. "You're dismantling everything James Morrison built." Their resistance didn't surprise me, but it was more aggressive than I'd anticipated. I knew I couldn't let fear dictate my decisions. Not now, not after coming this far. Instead, I called an emergency meeting, not just for Morrison Tech's leadership team, but for key employees from both companies. The stakes were too high to risk losing anyone who mattered. Standing on the stage of the newly renovated auditorium, I adjusted the microphone and surveyed the room. Hundreds of faces stared back at me, some curious, others skeptical, and a few openly hostile. Behind me, a massive screen displayed Dreamscape's logo alongside Morrison Tech's, a symbolic merger of two worlds. "I know there's been uncertainty," I began, my voice steady despite the storm brewing beneath the surface. "But today, I want to show you why this isn't the end. It's the beginning." I clicked the remote, and the screen lit up with visuals of groundbreaking projects. AI-driven animations that could revolutionize corporate training, immersive virtual reality experiences tailored for education, and cutting-edge digital tools designed to streamline content creation. Each slide showcased Dreamscape's vision, a future where creativity and technology merged seamlessly. "This is what we're building together," I said, turning to face the audience. "Morrison Tech won't just survive under Dreamscape, it will thrive. Together, we can lead the digital industry into uncharted territory." But before the applause could build, chaos erupted. Diana stormed into the auditorium, her heels clicking like gunshots against the polished floor. "This is a conspiracy," she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. "Maya used insider information to orchestrate this takeover. It's illegal, unethical, everything she claims to stand against." Her accusations hung heavy in the air, silencing the room. For a moment, doubt flickered across some faces. Then Marcus stepped forward, calm and authoritative. "Ms. Diana Morrison," he addressed her directly, holding up a folder of legal documents. Every procedure followed during this acquisition adhered strictly to federal regulations. Any attempt to challenge the transaction would be baseless and costly. His words struck like a hammer, leaving no room for argument. As Diana stood frozen, her mask of confidence shattered, I locked eyes with her. "This isn't about revenge," I said firmly. "It's about progress. If you're willing to adapt, there's still a place for you here. But the choice is yours." The headlines hit like a storm. "Maya Morrison, the family betrayer," screamed one tabloid. Another read, "How one artist deceived her own bloodline." Diana had done exactly what I feared she would. She reached out to every journalist she knew, spinning a narrative that painted me as a manipulative liar who'd spent years deceiving our family for revenge. Her accusations spread faster than wildfire, fueled by sensationalist media outlets eager to capitalize on scandal. By morning, my phone was flooded with calls from reporters and PR teams alike. Marcus advised staying silent, but I knew this wasn't something I could ignore. If I didn't address it head-on, the damage could spiral out of control. Within hours, I arranged an emergency press conference at Dreamscape's headquarters, a sleek, modern space designed to reflect innovation. As cameras flashed and reporters jotted down notes, I stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. "I'm not here to defend myself against baseless accusations," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I'm here to share my truth, not just for those who doubt me, but for anyone who has ever been told their dreams don't matter." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces, some skeptical, others curious. Yes, I kept my success hidden from my family. But it wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. I recounted my journey, late nights studying business while pursuing art, building Dreamscape from scratch, and navigating the constant dismissal from those closest to me. When you grow up in a world that measures success only by profit margins and boardroom titles, choosing a different path can feel like fighting an uphill battle. My family didn't see my work as valid because it didn't fit their definition of achievement. So, I chose to build my empire quietly, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I needed to create without constraints. The room fell silent as I spoke, my words carrying raw emotion. When I finished, a reporter asked, "Why reveal your identity now?" I smiled faintly. Because sometimes, the greatest act of creation is stepping fully into who you are, and letting others see it too. To my surprise, the speech resonated deeply. Social media exploded with support, hashtags like #ArtMeetsBusiness trending globally. Even critics began praising my transparency. Back home, the shift was palpable. My father called me later that evening, his voice softer than usual. "I misjudged you, Maya," he admitted. "You've built something extraordinary." For the first time, I heard genuine respect in his tone. The private dining room at Le Bernardin was filled with the soft clinking of crystal glasses and murmurs of polite conversation. The tension from earlier had seemingly dissipated, replaced by an uneasy truce. My family, now aware of my true identity as Maya Phoenix, CEO of Dreamscape Animation Studios, attempted to process the seismic shift in their perception of me. They raised their glasses to toast new beginnings, though I could see the lingering uncertainty in some of their eyes. Just as dessert plates were being cleared, a sudden commotion near the entrance shattered the fragile calm. A reporter, his notepad already poised for action, strode into the room, flanked by a cameraman. Diana sat frozen beside me, her lips curling into a faint smirk. She had orchestrated this moment, no doubt hoping to catch me off guard. The air grew heavy as all eyes turned toward me, waiting for my response. "Ms. Morrison," the reporter began, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "There are accusations that your acquisition of Morrison Tech has effectively destroyed decades of your family's legacy. Do you feel any guilt about dismantling what your father built?" The room seemed to hold its breath. Every gaze bore into me, searching for cracks in my composure. For a moment, I thought back to every dismissive comment, every condescending offer of help, every time they'd underestimated me. But instead of anger, I felt clarity, a quiet certainty that this was my moment to redefine their understanding of success. I smiled, setting down my glass with deliberate calm. "Let me be clear," I said, my voice steady and resonant. "I haven't destroyed anything. What I've done is breathe new life into something extraordinary. Morrison Tech isn't just surviving, it's evolving. Legacy isn't about clinging to the past. It's about adapting, innovating, and creating something that can thrive in the future. I'm not destroying our heritage. I'm reinventing it." The reporter hesitated, clearly unprepared for my confidence. Before he could follow up, my father spoke, his tone measured but laced with emotion. "She's right," he admitted, looking around the table. "We've been so focused on preserving what we had that we forgot to grow. Maya, she's shown us another way." As the reporter retreated, visibly deflated, Diana leaned in, her expression unreadable. "You always were the artist," she murmured, half-jokingly, "even when it comes to business." Later that night, back in my penthouse, I opened the old sketchbook I'd carried since art school. Its pages were filled with early concepts, the seeds of Dreamscape's first projects. On the final page, I added a new line beneath the quote I'd written years ago. "Not everyone will understand your value, but don't let that stop you from shining." Closing the book, I walked out onto the terrace, gazing at the city lights below. This wasn't just my masterpiece, it was only the beginning. As I stood on the terrace of my penthouse that night, the city lights stretching endlessly before me, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Success, I realized, isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. For years, I'd been told that art and business were like oil and water, two forces destined never to mix. My father's voice echoed in my mind. "Art isn't a career, Maya. It's a distraction." But he was wrong. Art wasn't just a passion. It was a lens through which I saw opportunities others overlooked. And business? It was the canvas upon which I painted my vision. The world loves to put people in boxes, to define them by their degrees, their job titles, or their family legacies. Diana had spent her life chasing traditional markers of success: Harvard MBA, corner office, boardroom victories. She believed she was untouchable, invincible within the corporate fortress she'd built. Yet, while she played by the rules, I was rewriting them. Dreamscape Animation Studios wasn't born from a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint presentation. It emerged from sketches and notebooks, late-night brainstorming sessions, and an unshakable belief that creativity could drive innovation. But this wasn't just about proving myself to my family. It was about challenging the very notion of what success should look like. The moment I walked into that boardroom as Maya Phoenix, CEO of Dreamscape, I shattered every stereotype they'd ever imposed on me. They saw a struggling artist. I became a tech titan. They pitted my tiny apartment. I owned the entire building. They laughed at my Honda Civic. I parked it next to a Porsche they'd never seen. Patience and strategy had paid off, not just in dollars, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd stayed true to myself. Still, the hardest lesson wasn't for me. It was for them. Diana, who once dismissed my work as childish doodles, now sat across from me, humbled and uncertain. My father, whose disappointment had shadowed me for decades, finally looked at me with something resembling pride. Their judgment had blinded them, preventing them from seeing the truth. Greatness doesn't always wear a suit or sit at the head of a mahogany table. Sometimes, it hides behind a sketchpad, waiting for its moment to shine. As I closed my laptop that night, I thought about the ripple effect of this revelation. Morrison Tech wouldn't just survive under Dreamscape. It would thrive because we dared to blend art and technology in ways no one else had imagined. And perhaps, in time, my family would understand that success isn't about following the beaten path. It's about forging your own trail, even when the world tells you it's impossible.